please take a stand next to the witness chair, turn and face me. Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give in this case now and hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Would you please introduce yourself to the members?
My name is SO1 Dalton Tolbert.
How do you spell your first and last name?
First name is spelled D-A-L-T-O-N. Last name is spelled T-O-L-B-E-R-T.
Where is your current duty station?
My current duty station is on the East Coast.
And can you tell us a little bit about your command history?
I was assigned to SEAL Team 7 in 2012, and I worked there until in Alpha Platoon until 2017.
What about your training history? How did you become a SEAL?
I went through BUDS starting in December of 2009. Graduated BUDS in October of the following year. I then went to SQT soon after and graduated SQT November 11th, 2011.
Do you know Chief Gallagher?
I do.
How do you know him?
He was my platoon chief.
Do you see him here today?
I do.
Can you point him out for the members? The record reflect the witness has identified the accused. Did you know anything about Chief Gallagher before you had met him?
All the things I had heard were good at first. I heard, honestly, the first thing I ever heard about him was he was called Fast Eddie. He was a fast runner.
So you heard good things about Chief Gallagher.
Correct.
When did you work in the same platoon as him?
The platoon started to form, I believe, mid to late 2015, early 2016.
Was that Alpha Platoon?
Correct.
Can you explain to the members the chain of command at Alpha Platoon?
As far as from the OIC down?
Yes.
Okay, would be OIC, the assistant AOIC, or the AOIC, excuse me, and then it would be Chief Gallagher.
So who was the OIC at the time?
Jake Portier.
And the AOIC?
Was Lieutenant Tom McNeil.
And then you said Chief Gallagher.
Correct.
Then who?
And then it would have been now Chief Miller.
What was your position with the platoon?
My position in the platoon, as far as leadership, was there was no exact title at the time. LPOs, and then we had squad leaders, but that wasn't something you put on an eval. So.
So with Alpha Platoon, eventually you deployed?
Correct.
Where'd you deploy to?
We deployed to Iraq.
Was that Mosul?
We were stationed in outstations in just outside of Erbil and up by the Mosul Dam. And then we were forward deployed from those outstations to Mosul.
What was the unit's role in Iraq?
The role, as I understood it, was the accompany, advise, and assist the Iraqi forces as they progressed through Mosul.
What was Chief Gallagher's role in the Alpha Platoon?
It would be what's considered a TAC lead, a tactical lead. So basically his role would be to take the commander's intent, the commander being, in our instance, in our platoon, would be the OIC, and use his tactics to get that outcome in the best way possible.
What was your role?
My role while on deployment in the beginning was sniper and lead navigator. And then later when Chief Miller took baby leave, I took over as the leading petty officer for the Sector 7 group of guys.
Do you recall an incident involving an injured ISIS fighter?
I do.
When was that?
I do not know the date.
Do you remember approximately?
I believe it was around May
Of what year?
2017.
Can you tell us about what you recall about that incident?
The first thing I remember about the incident So myself and SO1 Delay were on the corner of the compound we were at. Delay was using the DJI drone to look for potential targets, and I heard a call come over the radio saying, the Iraqis just brought in an injured ISIS fighter. I'm going to start treatment. That was the first thing I heard over the radio. At that time, the wall I was on had a hole in it, decent sized hole, about this big.
Would you say that's about 2 feet that you're holding your hands
2 feet,
apart?
correct. I looked through there, saw the gates of the compound we were in that day, and as they opened, a green Humvee rolled through with the ISIS fighter on the hood of the vehicle.
Now, did you hear Chief Gallagher say anything over the radio?
So after the first call came over the radio saying the Iraqis brought in an injured ISIS fighter, I'm going to start treatment. The next call I heard over the radio was, nobody touch him, he's mine.
Who was that from?
It sounded like Chief Gallagher.
What did the fighter look like when you saw him on the hood of the vehicle?
So from my point of view, I mean, he was laid out on the hood, not moving on his own. And all I could tell was there was blood on his left leg below the knee because he had like the capri pants on.
Approximately how close to the body were you when you saw him?
When he came through the gate?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Somewhere between 30 and 40 meters probably from the gate.
Did you ever get a closer look when he was brought in?
I did later on, yes.
And what state was he in at that point?
At that point, he had already expired. I just saw some of the medical treatments that had been done, and did at the time did not know what all had transpired.
So did you see any treatments done to the detainee?
I did not witness the treatments being done.
And so when you saw him come in the gate, and then later when you saw him, some treatments had been done. Could you tell what type of treatments?
From what I remember, I do remember seeing tubes, chest tubes, crike. I can't remember if it was like might have had the needle from a needle decompression. And that's about all I remember.
Did you see how the individual died?
I did not.
Were you ever part of a meeting where the events that day occurred?
Yes.
Were discussed? Do you know when? You're nodding your head. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you know when that was?
I do believe it was just later that day, once we got back to our compound where we stayed.
Who met to discuss?
So the meeting took place in the room that myself, SO1 Delay, and Chief Miller usually slept in. As I remember it, we were, obviously us three were in there, and I'm not sure, I don't remember properly on like what order guys started to come in, but at some point all of the E6s were in there, kind of talking it over, like, you know, what we should do or how we felt about it and things like that. And then Chief Gallagher came in after that.
Was SO1 Scott there?
I believe so, yes.
Did he say anything?
Objection.
Basis?
Hearsay.
Response?
It will be a non-statement, sir. So
All right, overruled then.
I do not remember anything that Corey Scott said.
Tell us what happened when Chief Gallagher came in.
When Chief Gallagher came in, we were all sitting along the walls on the cots and stuff, kind of spread out. Chief Gallagher sat in the middle, kind of facing all of us. And then we essentially just started discussing what had happened at that point.
What, if anything, did Chief Gallagher say?
So I am paraphrasing. I do not remember the exact statement, but it was along the lines of,
Objection.
Basis?
The paraphrasing,
Overruled.
speculation.
it was along the lines of, I thought you guys are cool with it. I thought it would be cool. And then it ended with, I won't do it around you guys anymore.
Did you ever witness any incidents involving the shooting of a non-combatant?
Yes.
Can you tell us approximately when that was?
This was after the ISIS fighter incident, so it would have been either late May or possibly the next month. I don't remember an exact date.
Where were you?
We were on the east side of Mosul, across the river, looking into the west side.
What was the mission?
The mission, as I understood it that day, was the same as a lot of other days prior, was to keep the ISIS fighters from essentially drinking water, to wear them down. Strikes had been made on the water pumps that they had flowing into the city, and so to keep them from getting to the river to drink the water.
Who was out that day?
That day, as I remember, it would have been most of the men from the Sector 7 house. It would have been Chief Gallagher, myself, SO1 Delay, SO1 Byrne, Jake Portier, Lieutenant Tom McNeil, SO1 Arrington, SO2 Ivan Villanueva. And one of the EOD guys, I'm not sure which one.
Where would you have taken up position?
There were a few different spots, typical positions. There was a building that had been bombed out straight through the middle, so it segmented the building into two sections. There was a northern section and a southern section. Another typical spot would be there was a carnival with a tower that had reinforced concrete on it that was pretty good as well.
Your Honor, I'm going to show the witness, or I'm going to publish what's already been admitted as Prosecution Exhibit 11.
Okay.
You recognize this?
I do.
All the members see it? Affirmative response from all the members. All right. What is this?
This is an overhead image of an area we would typically take positions.
Was this where you were?
Yes.
All right. If I were to ask you, well, what's the body of water there? What are we looking at?
That is the Tigris River.
I'm going to set it up so you can draw on this pad for us. If you can, would you recall map directions on there, like north, south, east, west?
Roughly, yes.
Your Honor, if I could have the witness join me up here. We'll have this marked as Prosecution Exhibit 17 for identification.
You may.
Please join me. So one, Tolbert, I'm going to hand you this pen. If you could just write an N on which direction was north.
So, can I just go?
On the edge of the exhibit.
Okay.
All right. So which direction would be east? And you put an E there. On the day you're talking about, could you please circle where you were located? All right. And who else was? You talked about the unit was there. Were you guys broken up into teams? What was the operation?
Council, if he's done marking, can we return to the,
I'm going to have him keep marking.
okay, this is not ideal.
Understood. Okay, yes, sir.
Would you like me to mark anything else?
We'll wait. So go ahead, take your seat, and I'll just call you back up if we have to do more. All right, so what were you doing in the circled location?
In that circle location, we were taking up sniper positions there, and yep.
All right. Can you tell us what you saw?
So that day, much like others, there were mostly civilians that were trying to get to the water. Typically, you put out a warning shot well in front of them, and most of them would hardly react as being scared. Put it far enough in front, and they understood, and they would turn around and walk back. And then the incident in question was, I was scanning the area. This area was relatively large, and it's kind of hard to tell from here, but this actually slopes uphill, and you're facing a lot of windows. So scanning windows at the same time watching the riverbank was a lot of area to cover. In between resting my eye and scanning other parts, I did not notice a man make it pretty close to the river. And as soon as I noticed that he already made it close to the water, I aimed to the side of him, far to the side, and fired, and it startled him. Once he was, sorry?
Wait a second. I'm going to ask you to come up in a different color if you could circle where you saw the individual. All right. Well, let's make it a little bigger. Make it an X then. All right. Taking the pen back. Go ahead. Take your seat.
Let the record reflect that the witness has made a red X.
What happened next after you took your warning shot?
Took the shot. The old man got startled. He ran away from the riverbank straight back towards a building, trying to get away from the shot. And he got to the door of the building. The door was locked. He was panicking, trying to get into it. He initially moved to the north along the building, trying to get in, trying to get around, and then once he realized he couldn't get in, he ran from north to south across the road, and then that's when I saw the red mark on his back after hearing the shot being taken, and I saw him fall for the first time.
What happened next?
Following that, he actually stood back up, and at this time he was wearing the traditional garb of Middle Eastern men, the white dress-looking uniform, and the blood started to pool on his back at this point. I saw it. I mean, it was a square hit in the back. And over the radio, I hear, "You guys missed him, but I got him."
Were you able to determine who said that?
It sounded like Chief Gallagher.
What's a good shot?
Are you asking if that shot would be hard to make?
No, I'm asking what do you consider when a shot is good to take?
Um,
Am I using the wrong terminology? Is
no, now I understand it now. I would say a good shot on that deployment. We had a lot of things that we put in place to give us the right idea that we were making the right choice and the right shot. And every guy had to live with whatever he was doing. Typically, we would have the radio operator who worked with the interpreters. Interpreters would listen to radio chatter, and we would discern from that a lot of times what we were seeing was what we were hearing on the radio chatter as well. Beyond that, typically the ISIS members were usually of fighting age, not usually that old. They had longer hair, they were unkempt looking, whereas most of the civilians that we saw, especially even in that area, some of them would even be wearing blue jeans and t-shirts. They kept their beards cut, they had short hair. ISIS typically wore clothing that looked like it would be comfortable to fight in, loose and athletic.
So how long would you stay in an area to try and make those types of determinations?
You're saying before taking a shot?
Yes.
I think it varied. It could be made within an hour. It happened sometimes, and then sometimes it didn't happen for days.
All right. Had you had time to observe that individual?
That individual, that was the first time I had ever seen him.
And was there anything that indicated to you that that was a good shot?
No.
Where was Chief Gallagher set up during this?
Chief Gallagher is typically set up in the northern part of that same structure that I circled earlier.
Overruled.
Chief Gallagher typically set up in the northern part.
Non-responsive, he asked where he was that day, not where he was different.
I understand. Overruled.
Chief Gallagher was set up in that northern part of the building.
And was he there, to your knowledge, when the shot was taken?
Yes.
Changing to a different color, if you could come please mark where Chief Gallagher was positioned when you heard the shot. You just do an X. Is that a blue X? I apologize, the court, I'm colorblind, so, thank you. Purple X. This time I would ask that prosecution exhibit 17 for identification be entered into evidence and the words for identification be stricken.
Defense, any objection?
No.
Without objection, prosecution exhibit 17 for identification is admitted evidence. The words for identification will be stricken.
Mr. Tolbert, those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
Cross?
Yes, Good afternoon. You and I haven't met before, have we?
No.
Haven't had a chance to go over any of these questions I'm about to ask you yet, have you?
No.
How many times have you met with these prosecutors?
Twice.
How many times have you met with prior set of prosecutors?
I'm counting the first one, actually. The first one and these
Okay.
ones, it equals twice total.
And what about NCIS? How many times did you meet with them?
I met with NCIS twice.
Okay, so a total of 4 meetings? About?
Correct.
And how long do these meetings?
The initial meeting with NCIS would have been roughly an hour. The second meeting with NCIS would have been about the same. And then the first meeting with the prosecutors would have been about an hour and a half to go over court procedures in here. And then a second one, because the trial kept getting pushed, we did another one to go over court procedures as well in here for about an hour and a half.
Okay, so that's about 5 hours that you spent with them preparing for your testimony today, is that correct?
Correct.
You were asked to meet with the defense, though, weren't you?
I never received any notification to meet with defense.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about this incident real quick. You say that Chief Gallagher was in the North Tower, right?
Correct.
Have you ever been in the North Tower?
I have not.
To your knowledge, do these towers have multiple shooting positions within them?
Yes.
And you're mostly shooting through a loophole, correct?
Typically, yes.
And do you know which loophole Chief Gallagher was shooting through on that day?
I do not.
Loopholes are typically how large?
It varies in size. If we made our own, we'd make them pretty small if we wanted to watch a small area. Sometimes we'd use ones that were made by, shrapnel or building pieces that fall off. They're not.
Okay, if you made your own pretty small, you said, what's that, about
Foot and a half. Foot and a half would be a good size.
1.5 feet?
For a large area, yes.
And then would you set up right on the loophole, or would you set up further back into the building?
Ideally, you would set further back.
Okay, and that's to muzzle the noise?
It's to not be seen in front of the loophole.
Okay.
It's not for the noise.
Would it also suppress the muzzle flash?
To an extent, if you're looking right at a loophole, when the muzzle flash goes off, there's not a whole lot that actually blocks the muzzle flash.
Okay. The loophole, depending on the size of the loophole, that does somewhat limit what the field of fire is, right?
Correct.
Do you know what Chief Gallagher's field of fire was on this day?
I do not.
Now, you were in the other tower with Mr. DeLay, is that correct?
I believe DeLay was there that day, yes.
Okay, and you stated on direct that you didn't see this guy until right when he got to the river, right?
Correct.
He kind of snuck up on you.
Correct.
And as soon as you saw him, you shot a warning shot at him, right?
Yes.
Did Officer DeLay shoot a warning shot at him?
Not that I remember.
Would it assist you in your recollection if I showed you the write-up from your NCIS interview?
Sure.
Or may I approach the witness?
You may.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay, so in fact, you and Mr. DeLay were shooting warning shots at this individual, is that correct?
Yes.
You didn't go out on the platoon net to say, hey, I see a civilian, I'm shooting warning shots at him, did you?
We never did that.
Okay, so as far as people in the other tower knew, the two of you were both shooting warning shots, were both shooting shots at this individual, correct?
That's incorrect.
As far as the people, well, they would have heard your gunshot, right? They would have heard delays, right?
Correct.
would have heard multiple shots coming from your tower, and they would have seen this man running in a zigzag pattern?
He did not run in a zigzag pattern.
Did you tell NCIS that he was running in a zigzag pattern?
No, he ran straight to the building.
On 20 April 2018, did you meet with NCIS?
Yes.
During that meeting, you were asked about this incident, correct?
Yes.
And in that meeting, you stated that you and SO1 Delay each fired warning shots near the old man, which caused him to run in a zigzag pattern. Did you say that?
Yes.
So is your testimony here today that he was or was not running in a zigzag pattern?
As I remember it, I do not remember a zigzag pattern. If that is the way I described it before, then I misspoke.
You misspoke now or you misspoke then?
I misspoke then.
Misspoke then, okay. 20 April 2018, that's over a year ago, right?
Yes.
That'd certainly be closer in time to the incident than today, right?
Yes.
Your memory would have been better in April of 2018 than it is today, correct?
Not necessarily about that event, because at the time when I got called in for that, I was not prepared, did not think, had not thought about the event until I was asked about it in that moment. And then as I had more time to remember, I certainly remember more things about it.
So NCIS called you in for an interview. You hadn't had time to prepare your story.
Not prepare my story, to remember the incident, because they did not say what they were going to ask me about.
Okay. Well, what did you do to help yourself prepare to remember for today?
I think just going over it in my head, like remembering everything that I really heard that day. Like I said, when I was asked by NCIS, I was still very frazzled and nervous about the situation as well. I did not know what was going to happen. I had never worked with law enforcement in that capacity before. I was nervous.
You were working with law enforcement at that time?
I was giving my statement to law enforcement, yes.
Right, but you just said you'd never worked with law enforcement in that capacity before. Were you working with law enforcement at that time?
I don't understand.
Well, were you and NCIS working together for something?
No.
Were you working with NCIS?
I would assume cooperating in an investigation was somewhat of an working together, but
Well, most witnesses just give statements to NCIS. You said work with. Why do you say you were working with them?
because I was cooperating.
So, the people in the other tower, just to back up a little bit, they hear multiple shots from your tower, correct?
Correct.
Presumably they see multiple impacts surrounding this man, correct?
Not surrounding.
To one side of him.
Very far to one side, yes.
Okay, and they see him running.
Yes.
And you have not gotten on the radio to say, hey, this guy's a non-combatant, I'm firing warning shots at him, right?
No.
You didn't give anybody in the other tower the indication that you intended to miss, did you?
No, we had done this a lot of times before. This was not anything new this day. Most people knew that their area of responsibility was to their spot and ours was to the south, so it typically did not happen.
Right, but that wasn't my question.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was whether you gave the other tower any indication as to whether these were warning shots or just shots that you missed. Simple yes or no question.
We did not give them any indication.
Okay. And you say that after that, Chief Gallagher got on the radio, I think you said here that he said, I got him, right?
You missed them. You guys missed them, but I got them.
You two missed him.
You guys
but
missed
I
them,
got him.
Mr. Parlatore.
What's that?
You guys missed them?
I'm looking at the 20 April 2018 where you said to NCIS, you too missed him, but I got him. Is this another one of those things that your memory's improved with time?
No, they actually brought that document to me, and I read it myself, and I crossed it out and said, "You guys," and then I actually signed that.
Okay. I see. A year later, in January 2019, you said that he said, "You guys missed him, but I got him."
Correct.
You said here that the man stood back up
Yes.
and then stumbled again. Going back to your original statement on April 2018, you said that he began to crawl and attempt to get to his feet, but collapsed. Is that right?
Yes.
So, again, over a year ago, he didn't stand back up. He just tried. Today, he actually did stand up, right?
He stood back up.
Okay, so when you told NCIS that over a year ago, that was another failure of your memory?
No, I do not believe so. I think that was in the wording.
No. You didn't like Chief Gallagher very much during this deployment, did you? It's a yes or no question.
Part of the way through, I started not to like him as much.
Okay. You mentioned, you were asked earlier about the chain of command within the platoon. You talked about the OIC and the AOIC, correct?
Correct.
Isn't there a third officer in the platoon?
Correct. But I worked with the Sector 7 group, so the other officer would have been with the Sector 8 group, which we do not typically work together.
My question was whether there's a third officer in the platoon.
There is.
Yes or no?
Yes,
There is? Okay.
there is.
Who's that?
Lieutenant Junior Grade A.J. Hansen.
Okay. Now, you said today that at the time you heard that the ISIS fighter was being brought in, that you were standing at the door to the compound?
No, I could see the door of the compound through the hole.
You were on the inside or the outside?
I was on the outside of the wall of the compound.
Okay. You were there getting ready to launch a switchblade?
I was there with one of those ready to go, yes.
Okay. You were getting ready to launch a switchblade to hit what? But let me back up. What is a switchblade?
I'd rather not go into that if you don't mind.
Okay, a switchblade is I'll go into it for you. Does
Okay.
that work better?
Sure.
A switchblade is like a little drone with a warhead on it, correct?
Correct.
Where you launch it and then you fly it into whatever the target is, hit it and blow it up, right?
Correct.
It's not something that you can launch and then recover, right?
Correct.
So you have to have a target before you launch the switchblade, right?
Correct.
And at that time, you were getting ready to launch the switchblade, right?
Negative, I was not getting ready to launch one.
During your meeting with NCIS on 13 April 2018, you said you were outside prepping to launch the switchblade. Is that correct?
Yes.
So were you prepping to launch the switchblade or not?
I was preparing. I was always prepared to ready to use it.
Now, on this day, the platoon was split into two elements, right?
I remember it as one, to be honest.
Okay, so everybody was at the compound, right? There wasn't a forward element punched up with Lieutenant McNeil?
The only forward element I remember was the vehicle that Chief Gallagher was in. I don't know who was in the vehicle.
There were in fact two vehicles up forward, right?
That I do not know.
You don't know whether there were two vehicles up forward or
I
one?
do not. It did not come over the radio, and I did not have visual on our guys leaving the compound.
Isn't the fact that you were Chief Gallagher's driver that day?
I drove to the compound to start the day. I did not drive on that day.
You were the driver of Chief Gallagher's vehicle that day, yes or no?
To get to the compound, yes.
Okay, and then once you got to the compound, you're in four vehicles, right?
Correct.
Two vehicles stay in the compound, the other two go up forward with Lieutenant McNeil, right?
Correct.
Okay, you're in Chief Gallagher's vehicle, right?
Negative.
You got out of Chief Gallagher's vehicle at that point?
Once we got to the compound, we all got out of our vehicles.
Who went forward with Chief Gallagher?
That's what I do not know.
Who stayed back?
From the time when I saw somebody, when the radio calls came over that the ISIS fighter came
No,
in,
the question is, who stayed back?
that I don't know either.
Do you remember, did anybody go up with Chief Gallagher? He just drive up on his own?
I assume somebody drove him.
Okay? So would it have been just the two of them?
That's happened before, yes.
Lieutenant McNeil, perhaps?
That I do not know.
But it's possible that Chief Gallagher and Lieutenant McNeil just drove up 500 yards forward of the position by themselves?
It would be odd to see Lieutenant McNeil do that.
I agree. That's why I'm asking you about this.
That I don't know.
You have no memory of who went forward.
I never knew at the time. It's not that I forgot.
Okay. There came a time later in this deployment where you got benched. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
You were complaining to Chief Gallagher about how you didn't have enough time to train for Green Team. Is that correct?
Amongst other things, yes.
Okay, and he benched you and said you can sit out this next operation and train for Green Team. Isn't that right?
He did say that, yes.
Okay. Going to Green Team was a goal of yours. Is that right?
It was, yes.
Is that a goal you realized?
Yes,
Did you pass Green Team?
I did.
When you said earlier you're stationed on the East Coast, what does that mean?
It means I work on an East Coast based SEAL team for NSW.
Little Creek?
No.
Down there?
Yes.
Okay. Have you deployed with them?
I have not.
When you returned from this deployment, a small group of members of the platoon got together on group text, is that right?
Yes.
Called that group the Sewing Circle, right?
Yes.
Remember who was on the Sewing Circle?
I do not remember all the members now.
This was on regular text or WhatsApp?
WhatsApp, I believe.
Mr. Palatori, can I ask this? Is this maybe a good chance for us to take just like a 10-minute recess? I don't want to interrupt you in the middle of anything, so.
This is actually probably a good time to take a break.
All right. Members, then let's take just a short health and comfort recess. If you'd be back in your deliberation room at 1400, I would appreciate it.
All right.
Court is in recess. Everyone, please carry on. Mr. Tolbert, since we're in the middle of your testimony, you may step down from the witness stand if you need to, but I direct you not to discuss your testimony with anyone during this recess. Do you understand? All right, thank you.
Just during the break, can I have this remark?
You bet. As a defense exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. It's all right, it's all right. This is all usual for me. Members, we continue with the examination of Mr. Tolbert. You may proceed.
May I approach to hand him what's been marked for identification as defendants exhibit Echo?
You may.
I've just handed you what's been marked as defendants exhibit Echo for identification. This is the extraction of a text message, group text message string. Do you recognize this text message string?
Where's the name of it? Sorry.
You'll see in the box in the middle of the page where it says identifier group.
Okay. Yes.
Okay? Is this a text message string that you were a member of?
Yes.
Look through it real quick and tell us if this appears to be a fair and accurate transcript of that text message communications.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like this submitted as defendant's echo and the words for identification.
Government objection?
No objection.
Without objection, defense exhibit echo for identification is admitted evidence. The words for identification will be stricken. You may proceed.
This is a text message string that was started by, I believe, Mr. DeLay.
He's in it, yes.
Okay. Can you please put it down so you're
Yep.
testifying from memory? At least take it.
Okay.
This is a text message string that was started by Mr. DeLay, isn't it?
I do not remember who started it.
Do you remember, well, the members of this group were Mr. DeLay, yourself, Chris Shoemake, Craig Miller, Joe Arrington, Corey Scott, and Josh Brenz. Is that correct?
Yes.
The title of this group text message was called The Sewing Circle. Is that correct?
Yes.
You returned from deployment in August or September of 2017, is that correct?
Yes.
And this was started on September 7th, 2017, is that correct?
I do not remember. Can I look?
Take a look if you need to recall.
Yes.
Okay. And in this text message string, you and your teammates discussed Chief Gallagher, is that right?
Yes.
Right from the beginning, you said, I guess Eddie's out for blood. You remember that?
I don't remember, but I believe it.
Okay. And you said, I guess he's asking around about who said he's stealing, right?
Yes.
Out of curiosity, you didn't say anywhere, I guess he's asking around about who said he's stabbing, right?
No.
Didn't ask around about who said he's shooting civilians, right?
No.
You only said he's asking around about who said he's stealing.
Yes.
Soon thereafter, Dylan DeLay said he probably wants to kill some of us. Is that correct?
I do not remember that.
Do you remember responding? Did he actually say kill?
Hold on just a second. If we could get control of defense exhibit echo so that we know when he's testifying from memory and when he's refreshing his recollection. Thank you.
Do you remember asking Corey Scott, did he actually say kill? Yes or no?
Yes.
Corey Scott responded, he talked about fighting people and mentioned he'd be down to kill someone as well, right?
I believe so, yes.
And you said, we'll need that, right?
I believe so.
You said we'll need that because you wanted to have some kind of threat like that as part of your later report. Is that right?
Not as a threat.
Not as a threat?
No.
So you just wanted to say that he was going to kill people not as a threat, but just as something to assassinate his character?
I was never going after his character.
Why did you need that he actually said kill?
This was in conjunction with other things that had been said and done that we were preparing to bring to people at our command.
Soon thereafter, Petty Officer Vrenz joined the group. Is that correct?
I believe so.
When he was added to the group, you said, "Welcome, Josh. Someone at the sewing circle table has spoken highly of you. That is why you are here. I am hoping you can be an asset to our cause." Did you say that to Petty Officer Vrenz in this text message,
That does sound like something I would say.
and potentially become a full-fledged member of the sewing circle. Did you say that?
Yes.
At a certain point, Craig Miller suggested, how about having Mullen report Eddie to military police so they can question him about the, quote, threat? Just one more thing he has to deal with. Remember him saying that?
I do not remember that.
Would you please turn to the fifth page? Would it refresh your recollection to look at this exhibit?
Sure, but I do believe you, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
In response to that, Petty Officer Brennan says, what was the threat? Right?
Okay.
And you said, I don't think the team would appreciate that. Right?
I believe so.
Shortly thereafter, there was a discussion about Master Chief Alizawi. And there was a comment about, by Dylan DeLay, that Al had a big old time shooting civilians with El Diablo. Remember that?
Yes.
Al is Master Chief Alizawi?
He is now, yes.
Oh, at the time he was a senior chief, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And he was the senior enlisted advisor of the troop?
Yes.
Okay. El Diablo, that refers to Chief Gallagher, doesn't it?
Correct.
Did Master Chief Alizawi shoot civilians with Chief Gallagher?
Not that I know of.
Did you think to say, hey Dylan, what are you talking about? Al didn't shoot civilians.
I did not think to ask him that.
Instead, you responded with the circle, the narrow out for a male. What does that mean?
I actually do not know why I would have said that.
You don't know why?
I
You
do.
know what I'm talking about, though.
I know the male symbol, correct?
Okay. Then you said, you guys want to talk about this tomorrow? You did say that you had a feeling if we don't act tomorrow, it could be too late and he may do something drastic back, right?
Yes.
You were worried that Chief Gallagher was going to do something drastic back to you, is that right?
Yes.
Right after that, you said what you thought he might do that was drastic, didn't you?
I do not remember what I said.
Right after that, you said he is a leave approver until the next chief comes in. Is that the very next thing you said?
I believe it, yes.
You were worried he might do something drastic and not approve your leave?
That's not what I was referring to.
It's the same sentence. At a certain point, you said, once it's out of the bag, we just got to stick to it, right?
Correct.
At that point, Corey Scott just started asking, what is the end goal from this conversation? Also, do we have evidence or something for the stealing? I don't want it to sound like rumors gone wild on them. Remember that?
Yes.
To which Joe Arrington responded, I agree, Corey. We need to have our shit squared before we go up and sound like that. We should have a sit-down tomorrow, right?
Yes.
You responded, I agree, but I think early, like before people get to work, like Eddie, right? So you were discussing having your shit squared before you went in, so you'd have something solid on the stealing, and it wouldn't sound like rumors gone wild, right?
Correct.
Again, this is not about getting shit squared with Eddie stab a detainee, right?
Those are not referring to that, no.
Soon thereafter, Dylan DeLay texted group, sewing circle meeting at Subway, dry side, time now, right? Greg Miller said, sure. Please speak up, it's a
Yes, sorry.
audio.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Josh Wren says, I know you guys need me, but I'm in the armory still, correct?
Yes.
Dylan DeLay said, we're 4 strong now, right?
Yes.
And you said, okay, I'll do your vote for you, right?
Yes.
This sewing circle, this wasn't the only group text that you guys had going at this time, was it?
It was not.
You also had a larger group text going with the entirety of Alpha Platoon?
Excluding Lieutenant Junior Grade Tom McNeil, Lieutenant Jay Portier, and Chief Eddie Gallagher.
Just excluding those 3?
And I believe one other guy that was not part of Alpha Platoon. He was an augment, correct?
Would that be Jay Seaburn?
I do not believe J.C. Byrne was ever in it.
Yeah. You did include Lieutenant Hanson, though, right?
Yes.
During that text message string, there was a discussion about when you get to Germany, telling the psych about the leadership so it could be used as ammo later, correct?
Yes.
Don't put their names in, because that'll get them upset. But do say leadership. Is that right?
It was not about the leadership, no.
It's not about the leadership?
No, it was not.
So when you said, don't tell the psych you hate the 2 individuals that ran this platoon, he gets uncomfortable, that wasn't about the leadership?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, that comment was.
But tell him about them without using names. He's putting in our reports to use as ammo once we get back.
Correct. I also said don't embellish or lie, tell the truth.
I'm just asking you about
Oh,
this.
sorry.
line.
Yeah. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So you were telling everybody in the platoon, make sure you say something to the psych about the 2 individuals that ran the platoon, right?
Yes.
And this text message string included one of the lieutenants,
Yes.
Lieutenant Hanson. Corey Pullman is a member of your platoon, correct?
He was an augment.
Okay. Was he a member of this text string?
At one point he was, yes.
Okay. At one point you were discussing cleaning out the high bay on this group text message, correct?
I would believe that, yes.
Corey Pullman said, you guys aren't the bosses of me anymore, right?
I would believe that, yes.
To which you said, it's not like you ever listened to anybody but Eddie, your boy, right?
I'm sure I would say that, yes.
And he said to you, well, that's what happens when there's only one person in the platoon who isn't a little risk-adverse faggot. Is that correct?
That sounds like him, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about another text message string. This one perhaps a little bit more recent. Because this Alpha Platoon text message string continues, doesn't it?
It does.
Continues up until last night.
Last night, yes.
In fact, last night, when one of the members, Chris Shoemake, said WTF to the group,
He did.
you and several other members instantly left the group.
Yes.
But before the trial began, you guys were discussing the trial, weren't you?
We were discussing articles that we would read about the trial.
Josh Vren says NCIS is my attorney. Is that bad?
That was a joke saying that he did not have an attorney or immunity at the time, I believe.
You don't like me very much either, do you?
Not your biggest fan, sir.
In fact, you called me a fucking retard of a lawyer in here, right?
Sounds like something I'd say.
You said I'm a worse public speaker than Eddie is at being a good teammate, right?
That also sounds true.
Where did you hear me giving a public speech?
In the media,
Okay. At a certain point, you issued a warning to the other members of your platoon, didn't you?
could you read it to me, sir?
Sure. I hope that the whole truth that I intend to tell is not tainted by anyone trying to spin some made-up narrative. And I really hope no one is intending to damn anyone that doesn't deserve it. I know guys are in different scenarios right now. Some are worried about careers, others threatened with jail time, or even death threats. I want to say it to all. If you choose Eddie Gallagher and this real brotherhood, and it affects myself or anyone else I consider a true brother, I think our friendship will end there. I don't want to say this is a threat, but I don't want anyone to be surprised. I hate to be the drama queen. I hope if anyone is intending on that, they can be okay with themselves and they're doing it for a very good reason. It may have high consequences down the road. Remember saying that?
Yes, that was in reference to...
I didn't ask you
if anybody
to
was
explain. I'm asking you whether you said that.
I did say that.
And this was said to the group, correct?
It was, yes.
And you were asked by the prosecutors what the purpose of this group text was, right?
I do not recall that.
Did you say you wanted to keep the guys in a positive mindset, letting them know that they aren't alone?
Yes.
You continued. I will tell that story in great detail. I hope if you intend to lie about it, it lines up perfectly. Because I remember it very well. Remember saying that?
I do.
And as we've already established, you remember it better today than over a year ago when you spoke to NCIS, right?
Between the zigzag and running straight to the building, yes.
If you don't care about civilians, that's your business. I work with plenty of guys that don't. You say that.
Yes.
Where do you work?
And NSW.
Where?
Objection, relevance.
Members will need just a couple of minutes.
All right.
Everyone, please be seated. Is this the beginning of the topic, or is this just a one-off?
I'm sorry.
Is this the beginning of the topic, or just a one-off?
This is, depending on how he answers, I'm not quite sure. It certainly does start to get into the topic, although we've discussed it before.
Okay. I'll overrule the objection. Would you ask the members to rejoin us? Yeah, would you just grab it and bring it over to me?
All right.
Everyone, please be seated. Members, I overrule the objection. You may proceed.
You're having a lot of difficulty telling this jury where you work.
Naval Special Warfare Development Group.
Okay. Just to be clear, when we were discussing earlier Green Team, that's a selection to get into the development group?
Correct.
You passed Green Team without any interference from anybody?
Without any interference from the process, correct.
Okay. You went on to say, I understand there may be some stories harder to tell than others, for good reason. I just hope no one outright lies to protect this man. I'm not expecting anyone to burn themselves. Did you say that?
Yes.
So now there's a couple of things in here that I want to get a little bit deeper into. You said some are worried about careers, others threatened with jail time or even death threats. You're talking about the members of this text string, correct?
Yes.
You're then talking about how there are some stories harder to tell than others, and you don't want anybody in this text string to burn themselves, right?
Yes.
So you want them to only tell enough to put Chief Gallagher in jail, but not so much that it hurts themselves, right?
That's not what I was saying, no. What I meant was it would be hard to tell the truth, but if it happens, it happens. I don't want that to happen, but if that's the way it has to go, that's the way it has to go.
And if somebody does tell the whole truth, they could burn themselves.
Correct.
Corey Scott was on this text message thing, wasn't he?
It was.
You're not a big fan of this legal process, are you?
I actually think this is a very fair trial. I was at one point frustrated with the continuances.
Let's talk about your frustration. Did your frustration rise to the level where you said, I'm going to burn this motherfucking courthouse to the ground?
Yes.
Did you call this legal proceeding a fucking joke?
Yes.
Did you say, somebody fire this pussy-ass fucking judge? Whose fucking courtroom is this?
Yes.
Time to man the fuck up, fags. Did you say that?
Yes.
You understand that the judge is a Navy captain, correct?
I understand.
So you're telling your fellow enlisted, actually, is there another officer in this?
Yes.
So you're telling your fellow enlisted and a lieutenant these type of things about an 06?
Yes.
Just last week, before coming in here, you said to everybody, is everyone getting their game face on?
Yes.
One moment. Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect?
Sir, before I begin, may I have a 39A?
You may. Members, will you excuse us just for a minute?
All right.
Everyone, please be seated. Government, do I need to excuse Petty Officer Tolbert?
No, sir.
Okay. What's going on?
In between, when Mr. Parlatore was reading some of the text, I'm obviously now going to read some that come around it. He read one, there were two in between, 1 minute apart, and then read another. I'd like to read the two in between. And they say, I've said it to everyone I work with, and I never hold back. I saw Eddie Gallagher shoot someone who in no way deserved to die. I shot more warning shots to save civilians from Eddie than I ever did at ISIS. I see an issue with that.
Okay. Will there be an objection to that? This is currently contained
It's
in.
within the same text message string, that's correct, Judge.
Is it in Defense Exhibit Echo?
No, this was one that I did not offer into evidence, I just.
All right. This has not been marked or anything like that yet?
Correct.
Okay, I understand. All right. Defense, is there an objection?
No.
Okay. Government, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Are we ready to recall the members, Government?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense? Are we ready to recall the members?
Yes.
All right. Would you ask the members to join us?
All right.
Everyone, please be seated. Government, you may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Mr. Tolbert, my colleague on the defense just asked you about some of the text messages that you sent back and forth with some of the other individuals on Alpha Platoon. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall the one about high consequences down the road?
I do.
Do you recall that after that message, you followed with, I've said it to everyone I work with, and I never hold back. I saw Eddie Gallagher shoot someone who in no way deserved to die. I shot more warning shots to save civilians from Eddie than I ever did at ISIS. I see an issue with that.
I did say that.
What were the events surrounding, I'm gonna burn this motherfucking courthouse to the ground?
Objection, Judge.
All right, I'm sorry. We'll need to take a short recess. We're having an issue with our recording equipment. So members, if you'd return to the deliberation room, we'll be on a brief recess. Thank you.
All right.
Court is in recess. Everyone carry on. Don't go too far. We'll see how much of a problem this is. Mr. Tolbert, like last time during the course of the recess, everyone please be seated. Government, you may proceed.
I've withdrawn the question. I want to ask you about some of the text messages in Defense Exhibit Echo that you were asked about. I'm handing you Defense Exhibit Echo. And SO1, are you able to see the numbers at the bottom of the page?
As far as the
4-digit numbers?
the
black numbers.
2693.
If you could turn to 2706.
This only goes to 2703.
We only have the
your text, did you ever discuss lying?
I only encourage guys not to do it.
In any of your text messages anywhere, did you ever conspire with any other individual to make up anything you testified to?
Never.
Hold on. Basis?
Calls for conclusion.
I'm sorry, a conclusion as to...
As a legal conclusion about a conspiracy.
All right, I think we'll interpret the question as the layman's definition of conspire, and you can inquire into what that definition may mean. So would you, do you remember the question, Petty Mr. Tolbert?
Yes.
What is your answer to the question?
I never did that.
All right, go ahead, Government.
Thanks. Earlier, when defense asked you if something would help refresh your recollection, do you recall what you were looking at?
Are you speaking of the text messages?
It was, you were being questioned about taking shots in zigzag running.
Correct.
Do you recall what you were looking at?
Oh, my earlier statements from April 2018, I believe.
Was it something you wrote, or was it a summary of what someone else says you said?
It was a summary, which was, as we found out, later revised as well.
Nothing further on.
Cross?
Yes. You were asked about a couple of additional segments of your long text message to your teammates there. You were reminding them of what you intended to testify to, correct?
After the article about the old man had come out, yes.
You were reminding them that you intended to shoot these warning, that you intended to testify about shooting the warning shots, right?
Yes.
Talked about the high consequences, right?
Of lying, yes.
This segment here about if you don't care about civilians, that's your business. I work with plenty of guys who don't. The people you work with now, you've never actually deployed with them, have you?
Correct.
So you have no clue whether the people at Development Group actually care about killing civilians, do you?
That's correct.
But you are perfectly happy to tell everybody else that the people over at Dev Group, they don't care about killing civilians, right?
That was an inappropriate statement on my part.
Is it true?
I've never deployed with them.
So you don't even know if the people at Dev Group care about killing civilians?
I assume they do care about killing civilians. They would not do that. That would be unprofessional.
So that part of your statement to your teammates here was a lie?
Yes, it was inappropriate.
Okay, so in the middle of telling them about, you know, this is my truth and your story better line up, you lied to them.
In a sense, yes.
Okay. And just so we're clear, the people that you were lying about being okay with civilians, those are your current teammates, right?
Correct.
Those are the ones that you're hoping to someday deploy with.
Unlikely now, but yes.
I can imagine so. And is that because you're lying to other people about whether they're okay with killing civilians?
No, it's because of the media attention.
Now, you were asked about whether you conspired with the other witnesses. You remember that?
Yes.
You did talk with the other witnesses, right?
Yes.
You talked about this case?
Talked about articles about the case, correct?
No, I'm talking about back in the beginning, the sewing circle texts. You talked about you talked about your hatred of Eddie, right?
The sewing circle didn't talk about this case, no.
No, that was an inartful question.
Sorry.
For once you're right about my public speaking. You did talk to them about how you hated Eddie, right?
I did mention that, yes.
You talked about getting together to talk about what you were going to say to leadership, right?
Correct.
You all wanted to, get the exact term, but get your shit squared up, right?
Correct.
Before we go in and sound like it's just rumors gone wild, right?
Correct.
That's not a conspiracy to all get together and make sure your shit's squared up?
I think this story being brought forward is definitely hard to hear for somebody for the first time, so we wanted to make sure it didn't sound like we were making it up.
And this is before you went in to tell NCIS your story, right?
Negative. This was before guys were talking to leadership at our command.
Which is before you went in to speak with NCIS, right?
Yes.
So you got your shit squared up before you went to talk to NCIS about zigzag patterns, right? You did tell NCIS that he was running a zigzag pattern, didn't you? Even though you've corrected it later.
I do not remember if I said that.
Do you have any reason to doubt what the NCIS agents wrote down?
The first thing they wrote earlier in one of your statements was that I said, you two missed him, but I got him, and I did revise that later on when I read the statement. I made that statement, and it was written down wrong in the first place.
Right, but when they wrote down zigzag pattern, is that something the NCIS agents made up, or is that something you told them?
I do not remember.
No further questions.
Redirect.
How many times in the sewing circle text did you all send pictures to each other of Chief Gallagher holding a dead detainee?
I don't remember doing that ever.
It's not in there ever?
Not that I remember.
Is that stuff you guys sent to each other?
No.
When you were talking with these guys, do you recall what you told them on 8/25/2017 at 1:20 a.m.?
Is this the sewing circle text still?
Yes.
I do not recall.
If I show it to you, would that help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Who's the date time again?
Go ahead, look up when you're done reading. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
What did you say?
I said, seriously, tell the truth. This is only going to help us resolve this.
Do you know what you told them the next month, a 9/7 at 8:36 p.m.?
I do not know.
If I showed you your text, would that help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Look up when you're done. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
What did you say?
I said, when he asks you, do not lie or embellish. That way that nobody can say that we slandered him.
No further questions.
Cross.
So you wanted to make sure that it was written that you said tell the truth, right?
I did not know that somebody was going to see these text messages.
But you wrote down, everybody tell the truth, right?
Yes.
You also wrote down a lie about dev crew operators being okay with killing civilians, right?
That was inappropriate.
You lied about dev crew operators killing civilians, right?
Yes.
And this is in the same text message string.
Correct.
Same text message string.
Yes.
No further questions.
Redirect.
No questions.
Members, are there any questions for this witness? That's a negative response from all members. Government, is this witness subject to recall?
Yes, sir.
But Mr. Tolbert, you're temporarily excused. You may step down and return to your duties. During the pendency of this trial, you're not to discuss your testimony with anyone other than the counsel in this room. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may step